My offset Kamado Joe setup where we pipe the heat from one Joe into the other to cold smoke some cheese worked so well. I want to see if we can keep the offset Kamado magic alive and go for some smoked beef jerky using the offset Kamado Joe setup. Let's get into it. So as you can tell, it's the next day and our beef jerky is done, and it might look like beef jerky, but words cannot describe how terrible this is. And so I'm going to do something I've never done. Before you invest another second in this video, I'm just going to tell you how terrible this is. Now, we learned a lot, and that's what I'm going to try and focus on for the rest of the video for some redeeming qualities, because it's certainly not this beef jerky. But to illustrate just how bad this tastes, I have a regular Costco beef jerky that I think I'm going to be able to make taste just like the one I made. And to do that, it's really easy. All I need is some water, some ash from my ash pan here. Dump this in like so. Give that a nice little stir. Go Oreo, dunk. And that tastes better than mine, but it still tastes like meat flavored cigarette butts. Oh. So now we know what to do with this, which is right in the garbage. While I go wash the sin out of my mouth, I'll take you back to yesterday so you can hear the game plan, and I'll rejoin you after that to break down what exactly I think went wrong and what I'm going to take away from this horrible experience. So I'll rejoin you in a couple minutes after I walk through what the game plan is and where it went so wrong. Hey, I'm James from Smokin' Dad Barbecue, and today we are going to do a new take on beef jerky. Now, I've had some great success with beef jerky in the Kamado Joe, and most recently, I've done my double indirect setup and been able to maintain sub 200 degree temperatures for an amazing quality smoke, as well as dehydrating benefits. I've been able to dehydrate peppers, beef jerky, and this has been working fantastic. But I've always been curious about this idea of creating a bit of an offset effect in a Kamado Joe, where we have our firebox in one grill and we run that heat and smoke into another grill to see if this just makes it even easier to get great quality burning smoke, as well as that dehydration benefit without a bunch of that heat potentially burning our beef jerky. So if you missed the cold smoke video, I'll just take about 30 seconds or so to show you how I got set up to this point if you're interested in doing that. But based off the comments in the last video in the cold smoked cheese where I used the same setup, you don't need a spare Joe. If you have a $20 styrofoam cooler, you could just as easily cut a hole in that, pipe in the heat pipe as well as an exhaust vent, and run your smoke through that. So it doesn't have to be a crazy expensive, impractical solution to get this offset idea, but the idea and the principle would be the same. Run our fire nice and hot and pipe that smoke into a cool box or a cool Joe in our case. So let me show you how to set up, and I'll rejoin you to tell you more about the beef jerky prep. Okay, so to set up our big Joe, I'm just going to remove the control tower top. Take our clamp here, try and slide it around the outside of our smoke pipe. Drop that right down and just tighten this up a little bit. Okay, that looks good. Let's go attach it to the Classic. Okay, same idea with the Classic. We'll just pull off our control tower top, get another clamp, slide this on, and tighten everything into position. So now that we got our grill set up, the only difference I'm going to make to the cold smoked cheese video is I'm going to switch our firebox. So in the cold smoked cheese video, my Big Joe was my firebox and my Classic was my cook chamber. But for beef jerky, since I've got about 5 pounds of around roast, I know I need the real estate in the Big Joe. So same setup, I'm going to set up the Classic as my firebox, run that between 400 or 500 degrees Fahrenheit, and then use the grill expander to drape my beef jerky over on the grill extender rack in the Big Joe, and then run that airflow right out the bottom. Now for the beef jerky, I'm not going to spend too much time on this one. I'll put a link down below, since I'm doing the exact same recipe as the successful video I had on the Big Joe Series 3 using my double indirect method. Since I'm using Hey Grill's Hey Dr. Pepper Jalapeno beef jerky recipe with a few alterations here, where we're going to boil down our marinade, cut our slices really thin. So I was using my Dal Strong slicer knife just to get nice thin slices of our eye around roast. Let that marinate in the fridge overnight, and 24 hours later, we're just going to pull that out, pat it dry as we can on some paper towel so we don't have that extra moisture to contend with, so we can get to the business of smoking and dehydrating a little bit quicker. Again, if you want to see the full details on that recipe and the process of making the marinade and some of the other steps that go into slicing some jerky for home, be sure to check out that video after today's video is done. The other thing that I'm going to try and do is I'm going to run the temperature a little bit hotter and try and use some more natural wood. So in my head-to-head with the actual offset versus my Kamado Joe offset, I could still taste just a little bit of remaining charcoal flavor versus the nice clean smoke that I got off of my offset. And so to try and improve the quality of the smoke, I'm going to be throwing in some more wood chunks today using my ash drawer loading hack method. So I'll actually use a full-size chunk, slide that in underneath, and that'll allow me to continue adding smoke as the session goes on today. Other than that, the setup is going to be the exact same, and if it's anything like our Big Joe setup, I'm looking at a cook time anywhere from about 3 to 4 hours before we go from that raw, wet to nice dehydrated, tacky, but you could still tear it beef jerky. Really excited? Let's start to build our fire. All right, quick update. We're about 4 hours in, and despite the amount of time, our beef jerky is not looking like beef jerky. It's still raw and wet to the touch. And so I'm going to try and increase the temperature a little bit more here than the 400 or 500 degrees, since I don't know if the ambient temperature being that much colder today than when I did the cold smoked cheese, maybe I'm losing too much temperature coming out of the pipe. The other thing starting to get a little bit worrisome here is the color of the smoke coming out of the bottom of the Big Joe. This seemed a little bit cleaner. So despite how hot and clean the fire is in the Kamado Joe Classic as our firebox, by the time that fire and heat is running out of the Joe, it's coming out and looking a little bit white, which is in all experience a worrisome thing. But the cold smoked cheese looked a little bit like this and it came out all right. So I'm gonna try here and bump the temperature up a little bit higher and see if we can't get this a little bit closer to dehydrating. But right now we have already surpassed the time that it took to dehydrate beef jerky using my double indirect method. So we're just gonna keep at it, adding some more wood and charcoal to keep this fire nice and hot and see if we can't get this finished up in the next hour or two. All right, I'm still feeling the effects of that ash experiment, but again, it was so close to the one that I made. I'm not sure which one has turned my stomach. They're both that bad. So as the day went on, that 4-hour update eventually turned into an 8-hour update. It was late at night, and again, the beef jerky was nothing close to beef jerky. It was still just wet, hanging meat, even though I had tried to crank up the temperature. So as we were approaching kind of the late hours of the evening, it was kind of a diving catch to try and save it. It had been over 8 hours on the grill, which is way too long, and I wasn't happy with that smoke, which was coming out white. So in a diving catch attempt to try and save it, I fired up the real offset where I know I could get some nice hot clean air moving over that, and within about an hour or so it had finished dehydrating, and I put that in the bag for the taste test. So 8 hours of bad smoke followed by another hour or so of heat to try and dehydrate it. It's no wonder this went horribly wrong. So why did this not work compared to our offset setup in the cheese? So one, I think the ambient temperature just being that much cooler, I wasn't able to get the dome reading temperature close to that 150 degrees or even have it register. So as we were really sub-zero temperatures, I think the air was cooling so much and it was condensating, and I was just getting a lot of moisture in the air. And when we're getting a lot of that condensation and moisture, that's going against what we need for dehydrating our beef jerky. I'm not sure that the wood added anything. It was burning nice and hot and clean. I was able to add some in top, add some in the bottom, try and get that burning, and it was burning really well. Every time I looked in the Kamado Joe Classic, I had a nice clean fire, but despite how hot I tried to run it, it just wasn't coming out the Big Joe the same. So while this might have worked brilliantly for cold smoking cheese, maybe that was just luck of the draw and a warmer temperature, it could not be worse for our beef jerky, and I'll never be doing that again, as that was a complete throw out of a nice high around roast that we'd spent 24 hours marinating and prepping to get ready for this beef jerky, especially when I know I can already turn out a winning beef jerky recipe on the Kamado Joe Classic using my double indirect setup. So the next time I try it, I might actually just jump straight to the offset and give that a bit of a head-to-head comparison and see how that compares, since it was able to save and salvage, or at least make it look like beef jerky in the last hour or so. Let me know if you'd like to see that head-to-head down below. Hope you really got something out of this video other than beef jerky, and be sure to check out the recommendation videos. I got a Kamado Joe 101 playlist that'll help you avoid making some of these horrible mistakes that I made today, so you don't do the same. Until next time, I'm James from Smokin' Dad Barbecue, signing off. Don't be afraid, fire it up.